Good morning. I'm Lynn Ann Wagner, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a member of the First Unitarian Welcoming Congregation team. Our team has organized today's service. The team has formed to work toward yearly renewal of our Welcoming Congregation status, a UUA special designation. Welcoming congregations are committed to being warm and welcoming to people of all genders and sexualities, including but not limited to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, genderqueer, questioning, intersex, asexual, and agender, as well as allies. First Unitarian is striving for radical inclusion and creating spaces that honor and support every part of our identities, backgrounds, and experiences. Other team members, please wave when I say your names. Nathan Boone, Mordecai H.P., Loriana Lee Knapp, Carol Storr, Kate Rotler, Michelle Cerniker, and Charlie Singleshin. The month of October is LGBT History Month, and today is National Coming Out Day. 32 years ago, on the anniversary of the March on Washington for lesbian and gay rights, National Coming Out Day was first observed as a reminder that one of our most basic tools is the power of coming out. About half of all Americans have someone close to them who is gay or lesbian. For transgender people, that number is closer to 1 in 10. Coming out refers to the old expression, come out of the closet, and whether it is as lesbian, gay, bisexual, pansexual, transgender, non-binary, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, agender, or somewhere else on the gender or sexuality spectrums, it still matters. When people know someone who is LGBTQIA+, they are more likely to support equality under the law. Beyond that, our stories can be powerful to each other.
National Coming Out Day is a happy time to honor and celebrate the courage of so many who have risked their careers, friendships, family relationships, and even their lives to come out and speak the truth about their identities. But this is also a solemn time because we remember the countless lives that have been lost to hatred over the years, including the life of Matthew Shepard. 22 years ago in Fort Collins, Colorado, Matthew Shepard, a young gay college student, died. 5 days prior, he had been brutally attacked and left for dead in Wyoming, an act of horrific anti-gay violence. So on this day, we pause to remember the ancestors, the martyrs, the people who lost so much, all for the sake of truth and love.
But tomorrow is also Indigenous Peoples Day, a reimagination of Columbus Day on which, instead of celebrating the legacy of colonialism, we lift up the historical truths about the attempted genocide and oppression of Indigenous peoples in the Americas. This is a time to organize against current injustices and celebrate Indigenous resistance. Our opening hymn honors both National Coming Out Day and Indigenous Peoples Day, and highlighting the importance of breaking the silence of oppression with love. Nahui Janan is an organization committed to amplifying the voices and stories of Indigenous youth. Since its conception, Nahui Janan has traveled to 21 First Nation and Native American communities, has compiled over 60 original songs, produced 17 music videos, and worked with over 300 youths. This song is called Break the Silence, and it's performed by youth from the Wajushk Onigam First Nation, Ontario.
This is a letter to future generations. I hope when you read this and other accounts of what it has been like to grow up a closeted lesbian, it will show just how far we have come. I hope when you read this, being different is no big deal. I hope when you read this, that it's okay to be whomever you want to be, love whomever you choose to love, and become the person you're most comfortable being. I look back and realize I was born a lesbian into a white, privileged, heterosexual home. I didn't know it at the time, but the strong feelings I felt toward my girlfriends was probably my first attempt to express myself, but I had no role models. I knew of no books or magazines depicting anything remotely connected to lesbian realities. There was no lesbian music, few novels, and no movies or videos depicting loving relationships. I do remember that being called a queer was the worst thing anyone could say to me. My mother did everything she could to change me from being a tomboy into her little girl. Even though I continued to have intense feelings toward friends, I tried to fit into the heterosexual culture. That was the norm, what I was supposed to do. In college, I met a woman with whom I had a physical and sexual relationship. A dam broke somewhere deep inside me, and I knew I would never be the same. I couldn't go back, despite my half-hearted attempts. Even though I knew who and what I was, it had to remain a secret that only my girlfriend and I could share. I heard other names people called us, dyke, lessie, and bull dyke, and again, this was a mark of shame, except I didn't feel shame. Confused? Definitely, but not because of loving women. I was confused more about how I would navigate between two worlds. When I began my career with the federal government, it was illegal to perform any sexual acts with someone of the same sex. The simple act of holding hands suddenly was deemed a sexual act and therefore illegal. I witnessed two men get roughed up by the Oklahoma City cops because they exited a bar holding hands. Neither one was intoxicated. Medically, the psychiatric and psychological professions diagnosed us as mentally unstable. During the AIDS epidemic of the 80s, I remember a physician's lecture on the underworld of society where homosexuals, criminals, and the social and sexual deviants lurked. That was me, a social and sexual deviant. Except I really didn't feel that way about myself. But if I wanted to keep my job, it meant living two different lives, my pretend life and my real life. I retired 35 years from civil service after my first relationship with a woman. Only then did I let my secret out. After all, it wasn't illegal any longer to be a homosexual. The medical community had cleared us of being mentally unstable. But the attitudes of some in the heterosexual world remained. Echoes of nasty words still rang in the air at pride parades and other social gatherings. Jeers and jokes underscored how much we were still despised. Despite having a long way still to go, I hope we are on the cusp of total inclusivity. Marriage equality has been the major game changer. There are programs and actors on television who are out of the closet, movies that don't depict us as being crazy or felonious, books about us, our history, and our culture. The slogan from the 70s sums it up: we're everywhere, and we will always be everywhere. Coming Out Day is a celebration of who I am, who I have always been, and who I will always be. As a Unitarian Universalist, I ask of you, the future UU generations, learn our history, remember our history, and celebrate our history. My hope is that by the time you read this, no one will care who you love, only that you love. Sincerely, Susan Bishop.
Good morning. My name is Rhea Brown Bright, and my pronouns are they, them, theirs. As a queer person and as a non-binary person, I've gone through many iterations of coming out. In many ways, my experience has been relatively blessed and full of supportive people. I think that can be recognized in the fact that I am only 22, but I have been openly queer since middle school and openly non-binary since I was 17. Not everyone has the same opportunity to experience life in that way. On the other hand, I have found being openly non-binary a complicated identity to experience, even among loved ones and those I admire. The constant misgendering, the fear of correcting people, especially people that have any semblance of authority, such as professors, and the knowledge that no matter what I say or what I do, some people refuse to see me as me. It is hard. So while I think National Coming Out Day is so important because it shows others they are not alone, that even if they cannot be out on this day, there are people like them. There has never just been one coming out day for me, but multiple, with every single new person I meet, and it can bring fear, no matter the situation. I hope for future queer, trans, LGBT plus folks that when they see us saying we are welcoming, they truly feel it, that there are no more changes in language that need to be made, but that they are already there and they know they are in a space that embodies being radically inclusive, that they feel how safe and welcoming the UU community can be and their voices felt heard. Because I know even in the most inclusive of communities, there are times I felt I had to work to be seen as me. I do not want those who come after me to feel that who they are is work. However, life does not always feel like work for me, thanks to good and beloved friends. Finding people who let me be me has been essential. Being able to find those who share interests, deepen my faith and my spirituality, and having creative outlets have all been sources of comfort. Knowing my queer and trans history and knowing of the elders who came before me show me we have always existed, and it connects me to my past. That the thought of queer and trans ancestors is something so soothing. There's truly a sense for me that even in the hardest moments, we are still connected. And in that connection is how I know Unitarian Universalists can make things better for people like me, because I have already seen our faith do it in so many ways. Whether it be hosting an LGBT plus group like the one I attended here in high school, or having multi-stall gender-neutral bathrooms at General Assembly, I see the ways we support folks like me. Often making things better is simple as asking folks impacted, what is missing that makes things unequitable? It is a question I hope we ask ourselves often. Thank you.
I'm Chris Gonzalez. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the clerk of your board of trustees, as well as being on the technology committee. Every week, every Sunday, we take an offering. All the cash and designated checks from that offering go directly to external nonprofit organizations doing good work in our community, our Change for Change partners. In the month of August, we raised $2,344 for Black Lives Matter. And in September, we raised $2,105 for Hope for the Future. This month, our Change for Change partner is Other Options Incorporated. Other Options is a nonprofit focusing on the impact of HIV and AIDS. Since 1998, they have collaborated with community-based organizations, day centers, substance abuse programs, clinics, and social service agencies to distribute groceries, clothing, and educational literature to those in need. If you know of a community organization that would be a good candidate for Change, please contact our Social Justice Committee with that information. You can find more information about the application process in our weekly newsletter. And now, while we listen to the offertory, you may wish to make a donation to our Change for Change partner using a credit card for a website, or this could be a good time to find your checkbook, write it on a check, and put it inside to mail to First Unitarian tomorrow morning. Let today's offering reflect our highest aspirations for the work of this church in the world. Thank you.
of the longest day, when tears and sorrows wash down every face, comes the sound of voices rising through the dawn. We are singing in the struggle, and the struggle will go on. We are brown and black, white and golden too. We are every gender, every age and hue, and we move together, full.
Let's just go ahead and go on.
Hey everybody, my name is Tim Atkins and I am your Director of Lifespan Religious Exploration, and my pronouns are he, him, his. I have a great story I want to share with you today that you can get on your Kindle and Amazon devices. It's called Square Zare Pair. So let me pull it up. There we go. And there we go. Square Zare Pair. Written by Jace Peoples, illustrated by Christine Knopp, and published by Amazon Publishing. In the magical land of Hannah Madu lived fantastic creatures, always paired in twos. They grew in fields of the purple plant patch that laid spotted eggs from which they would hatch. They paired in two shapes, run round with one square, and the name of their tribe was the Manadoo-Zare. Once they had paired, their tails became one, joining the two in work, play, and fun. Yet one tail was shared by each Zare pair, always in twos, one round with one square. In huts they dwelled in the valley of Mies, eating low fruit from the red berry trees. The tribe lived in peace, or so I am told, until a new pairing came to their fold. Two squares had joined, and their tails became one. Such a Zare pairing had never been done. The others ran fast to see this square pair. They flocked with heads cocked, they mocked and they stared. How can you two bond without a round half? They said as they giggled, pointed, and laughed. Away with you both, you'll poison our minds. The true Manadoo-Zares are not like your kind. Sad, the squares ran from the valley of Mies to a hilltop with two red berry trees. There the square pair built a hut of their own, where they could still see the village they'd known. Like this they lived for 6 days and a night before they'd eaten all the low fruit in sight. That's when they looked up and let out a sigh. There were more berries on branches up high. Although climbing up first gave them a fright, the square pair still tried with all of their might. They found they could do what no Zares had done. They joined their square paws and climbed up as one. Up high, the berries were red, ripe, and round, much sweeter than those that were near the ground. These are most lovely, one square said with glee. Yes, said the other, quite nice, I agree. Let's bring a few down to our hilltop home, though it's a shame we will eat them alone. Many weeks passed by, and though the squares thrived, it wasn't long before winter arrived. From angry dark clouds fell great storms of snow that covered the hill and the village below. The Zares had never seen storms such as these, storms that left piles of snow on the trees. The low-hanging berries all the Zares ate fell flat on the ground from the snowfall's weight. The only berries untouched by the freeze were the ones at the tip-top of the trees. The Zares in the village, though they did try, couldn't quite reach those berries up high. Every Zare pair who began to climb quickly came tumbling down in no time. The Zares became scared. Tears ran down their snout. They stamped about, pouted, and then finally cried out, "What will we do? There's no fruit left to eat. Not one pair of Zares can manage this feat." But the square pair, as they watched from up high, said, "We cannot let those hungry Zares cry." They ran down the hill as fast as they could, quick to lend a hand, as friendly Zares should. They linked their square paws and climbed with much ease to the tip top of those red berry trees. They brought down berries for all Zares who had none, till all Zares were fed, yes, every last one. Then the oldest of all the Zare pairs approached the squares with the greatest care. With heads held low, for they were ashamed, they hugged the squares tightly and then proclaimed, "These two squares have pure and true Manitou hearts, but they were mistreated and made to depart. Because they're different, we sent them away. Yet it's their difference that saved us today." This pair of square Zares knew what we should. All happy pairs of Zares are quite good. Let's not forget what we've each learned this day. Each pair is special, yes, in their own way. Then the whole village jumped to rejoice. Together they sang with united voice, "From this day forth we all do declare, these square Zares are a fine Mandu pair." But that's not the end, I'm happy to say, because something fabulous happened that day. With their hearts now open, their minds had grown. Soon each pair learned unique skills of their own. Just like the squares who climbed the trees high, another pair found they could leap to the sky. And swim deep down to the ocean floor was a breeze for one pair instead of a chore. Another could run with lightning speed, while the eldest pair were the wisest indeed. For each pair was special, yes, it was true, just as they'd said, and now every Zare knew. Today, if you listen and close your eyes tight, they will say you can hear the Zare sing with delight. It matters not if you're round, mixed, or square. With every Zare pair, we work, play, and share. The end.
Wow, that was a great story, Tim. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Gray. My pronouns are her, or she, her, hers. I am a bisexual, queer, Unitarian Universalist, mother, partner, now marathon runner, artist, singer, and a very passionate person about being true to yourself. I am not perfect in any way. I grew up in a very Catholic community, and there was never any talk of anything other than heterosexuality in my home. I knew there was something a little different about me from a very young age, and I thought there was something wrong with me, and I never really talked about it because I just didn't think it was safe. But soon after having my daughter in my 20s, which was a long time, to go without really fully knowing myself, I met Mordecai, and I fell in love with them, and I finally saw the true me. A lot of my family members and friends and coworkers took a while to come around, and still to this day, I do feel that I am, like Rhea was saying, coming out when I meet new people, but it's becoming easier and easier, and I just knew everyone would have to be okay with it in their own time. And it was neat because my sisters did tell me that they thought it was kind of cool and courageous of me to come out and be open about it. I believe my coming out has helped my family and friends and coworkers in accepting others and themselves more, and to realize that different is beautiful and it can be exciting. When I finally got myself out in the open, it was a little scary, but freeing at the same time. I knew society could be harsh from the lack of understanding. Coming to First Unitarian really helped me with all of the loving, accepting, and understanding people I have met. I now feel more confident and stronger than ever in my own skin. And I'm just forever grateful for this church community, for sure. And to quote Dr. Wayne Dyer, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I am perfectly imperfect, and love is love. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. And thanks to everybody that's here today. It's an awesome group of people. My name is Mordecai. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a lifetime UU, and I practice Buddhism. I'm a seeker of knowledge, a non-binary human. I'm a queer artist and a lover, and I live in my identity with compassionate intentions.
Mordecai, I think you accidentally hit your mute button.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Tim. I'm going to go ahead and just come off right here. My sexuality coming out to my family was casual as the internal knowledge that led me there. That was 20 years ago. This was not without its societal struggles, but I felt like I deserved to be myself. During this time, I cultivated a space for the external dislike for anything mainstream because it did not represent me. It became an internal struggle, leading me to an unconscious behavior of forcibly inserting myself into a heteronormative, cisgendered world as a paper cutout of myself. Neither male or female, but thrown into this category of just being butch, just to make things just a little bit less uncomfortable and to be able to pass. Creating an armor to protect myself from the hate, to distract from the differences. I feel like even today, this armor lingers as another confine to my true self. Sexuality can be easy behind closed doors and with loving families. But sometimes it feels like after all these years, every day I come out when I leave the house. We see a world comfortable and shaming of all who don't fit in. But the question is, who's left after all the shame? I've never met one person the same. I realized that my sexuality had been tied directly into my gender identity my whole life. My other had been given a name to pass as someone real. But 35 years into this life, I realized that I've never let myself come out in my gender. The most external image of myself is ready for something more. I realized that my anger for the world stems out of a lack of representation of my true self, or at least an easier road to the acceptance. This may never happen, but I do know that my gender was complicated for the last time when I finally saw an image of myself shedding these socially constructed chains to the binary. I can be anyone I want to be as long as I am honest with myself. Easier said than done, most definitely. Life had become so amazing, but also difficult. I don't have a uniform anymore. I have taken a new name, and that takes time to be learned. I need time to grow. It's exhausting discussing my identity to others, but that is part of the honor of being visible for myself and for those in our community. I'm feeling freedom inside and fear outside for a world that I don't know if I'm ready for. Coming out day can be for an infinite spectrum of humans on the LGBTQIA spectrum in rainbow. Coming out doesn't only have to happen once in our lives because we're ever growing, always loving and being visible when we can for those who can't just yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mordecai. Thank you, Sarah, for all of our people giving reflections today. Thank you. Please join me in a spirit of prayer or meditation. On this National Coming Out Day, we are so thankful to be able to hear the stories of beloved members of our congregation. Their daily acts of courage in the name of love, truth, and identity make our whole community better, more vibrant, richer in the beautiful complexity of human experience. But we need to remember that we're able to hear these stories today only because so many have sacrificed their safety and their lives to get here. People like Harvey Milk, Baird Rustin, Sylvia Rivera, Marsha P. Johnson, and Stormy DeLaverie. May we lift up their names in honor. We remember the innocent victims who were beaten or bullied to death because of who they were or whom they loved. People like Matthew Shepard, Tyler Clementi, and so many more, including Dustin Parker, a trans man who was shot to death in McAlester, Oklahoma, just this year. May we lift up their names in honor and in mourning. We remember all of our LGBTQIA+ siblings who have suffered mass arrest, torture, and murder in countries around the world, including Uganda, Egypt, and Chechnya. And we remember the trans women who came to this country seeking asylum only to die while in detention due to lack of care. We remember Roxana Hernandez and Joanna Medina. May we lift up their names in honor and in mourning. And we remember all the others we've lost because of homophobic and transphobic hate, including the 49 victims of the Pulse Orlando massacre and the countless ones who went to their deaths in concentration camps of Nazi Germany wearing a pink triangle. We remember them with honor, with great mourning, and with the commitment to prevent such horrors from happening ever again. Today, we acknowledge that many beloved members of our community are living in fear. They are hearing the words of sitting members of our Supreme Court and wondering if their marriages will be made illegal, their families endangered. Just let that sit for a minute. What that means. Your marriage made illegal. Your family endangered. And we acknowledge that there are many who still today do not feel safe coming out of the closet, especially given the rise in hate crimes that we've seen over the last 4 years. For all of these, we pray for strength, resilience, and courage. May all of us stand united so that none of our siblings suffers alone. We are in this together. We have this together. No turning back, never turning back. Together, we see a future of love and rainbows. We will come out of this storm together into a beautiful light. Blessed be. Amen. Our anthem today is Warrior Heart by Shawnee. Shawnee Kish is a Canadian Mohawk Two-Spirit singer. Two-Spirit is a term that's appropriate for Indigenous peoples only. It's an umbrella term that's used for the many different tribal-specific names and roles that genderqueer and gender-fluid people have had for countless generations in those tribes and nations.
Young blood, are you alright? I know that cry, oh, your wicked scars
Hi there. I'm Kate. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm asexual, which means I don't experience sexual attraction at all. Ace is the short version that you'll hear me use a lot, and allosexual is the opposite. So basically everyone who does experience sexual attraction. I think I probably realized I was a little odd in this regard in high school, but I never could have described how. My reluctance to discuss anything at all involving sex or intimacy had this really ironic effect where I didn't have any idea what sexual attraction even was to describe that I didn't feel it the way other people did. But that's kind of only tangential to the point I wanted to try to make, which was more or less this. Before I learned that asexuality was a thing, I thought I was alone and fairly broken. Finding a label helped the former, but not as much the latter, because there's still like this entire society out there that tells me that not caring about sex and not experiencing sexual attraction is abnormal enough to the extent that it's often still treated as a disease by doctors and psychologists sometimes. When people want to understand what it's like moving through the world as me, I challenge them to consider the world from my perspective. It's bewildering at best. If you're sex averse or sex repulsed like a number of aces, and like I happen to be, it's really stressful. I realize that complaining, for example, about TV and movies being sometimes hypersexualized makes me sound like a 90-year-old woman, but I would love to be able to watch like The Witcher without becoming so freaking uncomfortable that I just give up. I desperately wanted to watch both Black Sails and Vikings, but never did. I've been called prude, boring, innocent, naive, immature, a child, the list goes on. And it's true that none of those carry the weight of decades of oppression, and that's something I'm thankful for. But it can still be bone deep, like gravity acting on your very soul, tiring to be asexual in an allosexual world. There's a flip side though. The good part of having that label to use. Once I had it, I could actually tell people about part of my existence that I couldn't really verbalize or explain before. Statistics say that we make up about 1% of the population, which means that there's technically a 1% chance that anyone I meet will be ace. Out of all the people in all the world that I could have first come out to outside of my wonderfully accepting family, I chose my very best friend in grad school. She's a botanist like me, and we'd become fast friends the moment we discovered the decorations on our desks matched. Doctor Who, Merlin, and How to Train Your Dragon, among others. I still wonder a little bit if something in my soul knew something in hers. I don't really believe in fate or predestination, but I've considered believing in the serendipity of chance. When I told her at lunch one day that I thought I was ace in this like very quiet murmur staring down at my plate of Panda Express that I'd been kind of just pushing around my plate, I thought I caught the edge of like a smile in my very peripheral vision, and I glanced up at her in a little bit of surprise because I knew she couldn't be laughing, but I didn't know why she was smiling. And she had this kind of wry, understanding smile on her face. And instead of saying anything that immediately made sense, she replied, "Has anyone asked you if you're like a plant yet?" I love correcting that one. We're both botanists, and really, who better to know about the sex lives of plants? Who better to explain that words can have more than one meaning, and that asexual can mean both without sex, as in the definition of how some plants reproduce, but also does not experience sexual attraction. So maybe I had to find out about my sexuality at the age of 26, sitting in my bedroom in Laramie, Wyoming, from a story that someone had written about another story and then put online for me to read it. But I did find it. And I wish I had some kind of wisdom to offer people who come after me who are ace. But I don't, because I'm still making my clumsy way, if you'll pardon the continued botany metaphors, down this really plant-choked path. And because I'm a botanist, I won't just take a machete and remove all of those plants that are in my way. I've got to gently untangle all of the questions and answers like hundreds of unruly little vines and get them in their places. And sometimes there are thorns, but somewhere in that mess, there's always, always wildflowers. I wanted to leave you with something profound, like some profound quote or something, but I'm actually constitutionally incapable of doing so. So instead, because I'm a giant goofy nerd, I'm going to give you a quote from a musical. I hope it gives you the same comfort it gives me, maybe perhaps in spite of the quote's original context, if you recognize where it comes from. Even the darkest night will end and the sun will rise. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Hello, my name is Micah Single. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am transgender. National Coming Out Day means a lot to me. It's a day that brings attention to the LGBTQIA+ community. It tells us it's okay to be who you are, and if you're having trouble coming out or you're in a place where it isn't safe, there's a community that supports you for who you are. As many of you know, I am active duty Air Force and have been serving for the past 10 years. In my time in service, I witnessed a lot of wins for the queer community. I've witnessed the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and celebrated the progression towards a more inclusive and accepting military. I've witnessed the lifting of the ban on transgender individuals, which gave myself the ability to come out as trans and allow me to transition while still in service. With my decision to transition came all the hope and anxiousness that comes with making any major life change that have consequences not just for myself, but for those around me. Still, there's a path forward for me to embrace who I am and live my life on my terms. With these victories will still come heartaches of battles lost. Witnessing the trans ban being reinstated and now the threat that looms over our community from our own government has been disheartening. The list of ways in which the governments we live under are attempting to roll back the progression for trans and non-binary people grows longer every day. In this time of political turmoil where my own existence is a topic of national discourse, I do know that there is always hope. There is hope because there is always people willing to fight for and with us. And here at First Unitarian, I found a wonderful community of allies and friends. The road that I walk as a trans person serving in the military in a deeply red state is often rocky. But here I have found people that are willing to share the journey and to fight for me when I no longer have any fight left. There is still a lot of work to be done in our own church, and I would encourage our fellow UUs to make an effort to be there with us and stand with us. While it is often the work of the oppressed to demand changes, we need allies to carry us, welcome us into a place of rest. First Unitarian has been that place of comfort for me. May everyone here work so that the next generation feels just as welcomed, just as accepted, and just as loved. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Micah. We're running a little bit long this morning, so we're going to skip our closing hymn, but it is such a great song. I strongly encourage you to go to look at the Ants on a Log music. I'll put the link to their site in the chat and look at the song, They're My Best Friend. Such a great and happy song. So I encourage you to do that. But for now, let's go ahead and extinguish our chalice. Sarah?
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of love and community which burns in our hearts.
And we have a video benediction to close our service. And Tim, would you introduce this for us?
I would love to. Thank you. Elandria Williams. Elandria Williams was a giant in Unitarian Universalism and was a proud, lifelong UU. I first really met Elandria when we were both elected to the UUA board, although technically I knew E's mom first. E's mom was on the UUA appointments committee, and I was on a committee called the appointments committee. We did similar work, and we met together once a year. And E's mom helped actually nominate me for the UUA board. So I certainly knew of Elandria, but didn't really get to know Elandria until I was on the board. So our time on the board was not easy, to say the least, but E was always there to call us to be our best selves, and always there for me personally too. I learned so much from E, from how to celebrate the small things in life, to how to best steer major institutional changes through a system that does not want to change. E's commitment to justice in Appalachia was a force to be reckoned with. Elandria worked for Highlander at one point, and if you don't know what the Highlander Center is, I encourage you to Google it up later. My fondest memories of Elandria are from when we had a UUA board meeting at the Highlander Center and seeing Elandria in their element. So E was nominated and served as our association's co-moderator for about 4 years. And if you give me a minute, just one quick story. If you flash back to about 3.5 years ago or so, we were on the UUA board. We were dealing with the resignations of the president, Peter Morales, and the resignations of a number of key staff in dealing with the serious need to reform the system now. Jim Key, who was the moderator at the time, had been leading us through the worst of it. And we were gearing up for what we thought would be a very contentious General Assembly. And in May, Jim's cancer returned with a vengeance. And about a week after we heard, he passed away from cancer. Suddenly, all of those plans were upended. So part of the board work at the time, most of the board was focused on General Assembly, but there was 3 of us who led the search for the interim moderator, and I was chair of that group. It was an attention-short timeline of a process, and we were blessed when Elandria and Barb Grieve said yes to serving our faith. It was history-making. The first time we had co-moderators, the first time we had a Black moderator, and the first time we had Barb, who identifies as trans, and Elandria, who identified as non-binary. We had 2 folks who were not cisgender in leadership in our faith, and it was the first time. And seeing Elandria in that role of moderator, just as some as you have, I know we made the right choice. So Elandria passed away about 2 weeks ago. Elandria had faced some severe medical conditions in their entire life, but died unexpectedly at the age of 41 after a routine medical procedure in Tennessee. We hold her family, her home church, Tennessee Valley UU Church, and all of Unitarian Universalism in our hearts as we mourn their loss. And now we close this service with a special benediction from Elandria. And if you never had the chance to meet Elandria, I think you'll see why we were so blessed to have E with us for the years we did. Rest in power, Elandria.
Hi, my name is Elandria Williams, a longtime member of Tennessee Valley UU Church, and I'm happy to share a poem with you I wrote called We Are Worthy. We are worthy, not because of what we produce, but because of who we are. We are divine bodies of light and darkness. You are not worthy because of what you offer, not because of what is in your mind, not for the support you give others, nor what you give at all. We are worthy and whole just because. In this great turning, in this great pandemic, in this radical readjustment and realignment, we are not disposable, we are needed. We are the very people that have withstood everything that has been thrown at us. And as Maya Angelou would say, still I rise. We arise from the pain. We rise from the grief. We rise from the limits people put on us and the limits we place on ourselves. We rise to be the children and the ancestors. We rise to be our true selves in relationship to our families and communities, recognizing our liberating and whole selves, honoring them and others as we strive for abundant communities, abundant lives, abundant relationships, and abundant values and cultural manifestations. You are worthiness personified. I, you, and we are worthy and desire a life where we are not fighting for our very existence. Imagine what we create if we were not always in the struggle. Imagine what we could envision if we were just allowed and just let be to go there. So tired of always having to resist, to fight, demanding, and pushing. To everyone that has the courage, the power, the ability to co-create what we want and need while rooting in what we cannot lose and who we are. You are the visionary. You are the hope. You are our ancestors' dreams. No, you might not ever end up on a list somewhere, but you are on a list in someone's heart and mind. And it's how you move in the world so people can see by example. You are the embodiment of what we need. The embodiment not of productivity, but the embodiment of radical love, care, and sanctuary. It's time, embodiment time. Embodiment. Living one's values out loud. Let me every day live my values out loud. Let us every day live our values out loud. Embodying our values. Not the productivity quotient, beyond productivity, past productivity, true embodiment, life.
Thank you so much for all of our participants today, for your beautiful and powerful and necessary reflections, and for everything you bring to our community and all you are. Many, many blessings and thanks. Please join us after a short break for our coffee hour and a chance to talk in small groups, and Nathan is graciously going to be hosting. So we'll see you then. Blessed be well, be safe, everyone. Love, love, love.